Welcome to Kathryn Raaker's World. Innovation, culture, adventure, fashion and health, artists, destinations, traditions. This is Kathryn Raaker's World.
Hi, this is Kathryn Raaker of Kathryn Raaker's World and Kathryn Raaker's Let's Just Talk radio show, both syndicated all across the world. We have again with us who I absolutely admire and thank him for his mission as a reporter, Nansu, who is actually a wonderful investigative reporter for the Epoch Times with an eye and focus on Chinese politics and government deception. Nan is highly knowledgeable in a variety of subjects, including the coronavirus and all things happening overseas. He reports have run on Epoch Times for some time now and gained a following based on his expertise in delivering thorough results. Welcome back to our show, Nansu.
Kathryn, hi, thank you for having me today.
Ni hao ma. How are you?
Yes, yes.
I may not say it the way
I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good. Thank you for saying that.
You're welcome. And Happy New Year. Here we go.
Happy New Year to you too.
You know, with more details swirling around Russia and China, the United States discovered an illegal connection that has led to sanctions. The U.S. Treasury Department had announced sanctions against the Space Science Technology Research Institute, or SpaceT for short, and Russians apparently use said imagery in an ongoing fight against Ukraine. Can you tell me, can we discuss what's going on with that, if you don't mind?
Okay, yeah. Based on the U.S. Treasury announcement that SpaceT is a Chinese small, quote-unquote, private satellite manufacturer, but it provides satellite image as intelligence to Russians Wagner Group, and Wagner is Russia's private army, private military that's directly controlled by Putin. Fighting. They have like about 50,000 troops to fight. Invaded this Ukraine. Group. Invaded Ukraine. So Wagner is labeled by the U.S. government as an international criminal group, and apparently this so-called I would say so-called private satellite manufacturer in China is providing the satellite image, all these informations to help the Wagner's military operations in Ukraine. Now, I just did an article was just published about 3 days ago. Mm-hmm. Based on my investigation, this SpaceT group, superficially, it's a private company. You know that in China, there's no actually any, private company. I know that. Eventually, they will control. Now, through my investigation, I found out that this so-called private satellite manufacturer has a collaboration partners, a long list of collaboration partners that are China's China's military programs, or China's top level defense contractors, state-owned defense contractors. In China, all the defense contractors are state-owned, and all the top level management personnel of this so-called private satellite manufacturer, they are all a part of China's either military program or their space program. Now, space program in China is also part of the state-owned industry. So basically, this company, I believe personally, it's a white glove for Chinese state-owned defense contractor or their military program.
Tell me, what does this say about Russia and China working together as a whole? And should this be a heavy concern to the US and, for that matter, other countries? I mean, we know, don't we, what China wants next, Taiwan and the rest of the world. Am I right?
Yes, China is quickly expanding towards the east and south. So basically, while the Russian is expanding to the west, so they're having each other's back. That's pretty much what it is. And in the Eurasian continent, it's quickly forming a huge alliance of, around Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, and Taliban in Afghanistan, and there are other countries quickly joining that alliance, like Pakistan, Belarus, all these countries. Think about all these different groups. What do they have in common? You have a communist regime, you have a Russian regime, and you have like a religious regime in Iran, and then you have a terrorist group. Their backgrounds, it's a variety of difference, but the only thing in common between all these groups, it's their common enemy. That's the United States. It's the enemy of freedom. So so basically, we should be seriously concerned how Russia and China are coming quickly together. Now, based on a report which just published a couple, I forgot which media, it published a report that it did investigation of Russia's import-export with China, comparing to 2021 and 2022. So China's export to Russia increased 15%. China's import from Russia increased close to 13%. Total import-export increased about 28%. Of course, most of the exports from Russia to China in 2022 was basically oil and gas, because the entire Western world is boycotting Russia's oil and gas. And that's, how China helped Russia to pay for its war. And also what China, it's very interesting now, 2020, compared with 2021, 2022, China's export of semiconductor exporting to Russia increased from 2021's 200 million to 500 million in 2022. Wow. And also China export about $3.5 million worth of drones to Russia. So it's not just Iran that's selling the drones to Russia. China has been also selling the drones to China now. Drones, they're like somewhere like a very low cost, couple $1,000, the expensive one maybe $10,000. Right. So $3.5 million, it's a lot of drones. So now, on top of all that, we know that our Secretary of State, Tony Blinken, is going to visit Beijing just like 5 days from now. Now, this is what happened. Yesterday, Russia official media TASS reported that the Chinese top diplomat, the former Chinese foreign minister, which right now he's elevated one level up. He's on the like a vice premier, that kind of level, in charge of all foreign affairs. He is scheduled to visit Moscow on February 20th. That's about 3 weeks from now. And it's more disturbing that they say he is going to go to Russia to arrange the details for Chairman Xi's visit to Russia in this spring. Now, Beijing has not confirmed if has not officially confirmed if she is going to visit Moscow. That there are two possibilities. One, he is really going there, right? Because remember on February 4th of last year, just 20 days prior to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Putin was in Beijing, joining Beijing's 2022 Beijing Winter Olympic. And that's how, she and Putin met, and they came out and make a, statement that the collaboration between Russia and China has no limit. Now, is she going to visit Moscow this spring? We don't know until Beijing officially confirmed. Another possibility here is they're just saying that, making the kind of a statement, a bunch of smokes. It's because they want some more bargaining chips when they negotiate with Blinken. So we don't know which one it's more possible, but at this point, at least we know on the 30th of last month, China's foreign affair spokesperson Mao Ning basically said, Taiwan is China's sovereignty. Taiwan is a red line. They're not going to talk to Blinken anything about related to Taiwan's sovereignty. Now, keep in mind, this is the purpose of Blinken's visit to Beijing, because this visit was arranged by the November meeting between Xi and Biden when they met each other during the G20 summit in Indonesia. So the focus of that meeting was about the peace of Taiwan Strait and Taiwan's security. So this is a follow-up of that meeting. Supposedly Blinken is going there solely, well, if not solely, but at least the major task is trying to get some sort of agreement to secure the security of Taiwan.
And do you really think that's the Chinese are going to agree to that?
Well, here it's what it is. Going back to the U.S.-China relationship, there are, the founding stones of U.S.-China diplomatic relationship based on 3 communiques signed between U.S. government and Chinese government. That's 1972, 1979, and 1982. Okay, during that 3 communiques, there's a huge difference, which later, become the difference between Beijing's One China principle and U.S. government's One China policy. So One China policy is totally different than One China principle. Now, most people don't know the difference. Now, the One China principle by Beijing basically says Taiwan is part of China. So Taiwan is, China's sovereignty. Now, while it's U.S. government's One China policy basically say U.S. government acknowledge, that's the key word, in the 3 communiques, acknowledge what Beijing stands for. Didn't say we agree. We say, well, we know that what Beijing believe, right? We know Beijing believe Taiwan is part of China, but they never say they agree. So now, but however, because China is important to the United States during the Cold War, so the U.S. government basically promised, say, once we establish once the United States establish the formal diplomatic relationship with Beijing, then they're not going to establish the formal diplomatic relationship with Taiwan. That's the promise. No formal diplomatic relationship, but didn't agree with Beijing that Taiwan is part of China. And that promise made by the U.S. government that promise was not made without condition. The condition is that China will not use military force to solve its issue between China and Taiwan. Now, clearly, in the past year, we saw, in the past several years, China has been, sending airplane approaching Taiwan, military ships approaching Taiwan, Last year during Nancy Pelosi's after Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan, they simultaneously conducted 7 military drills all around Taiwan. Now, and China also had a half-month-long military drill, naval military drill, between the middle of December all the way to the end of December. And they are 150 miles, clearly only 150 miles from Okinawa, only 500 miles within Guam. And on December 21st, when the U.S. reconnaissance airplane was flying in the international air, China's fighter jet really directly approaching U.S. plane, and then the distance between the two planes was less than 20 feet.
Wow. And on that note, we need to take a short break. That's all right. This is exciting. I mean, I don't think people realize, actually, Nancy, how much China wants Japan, wants that whole part of Asia. Am I correct?
That is correct.
And they'd go to Singapore as well. Believe me, they would. So anyhow, we'll be right back with Nancy, investigative reporter for the Epoch Times. Absolutely such a great interview. I think this is really educating our viewers and our listeners. So we'll be right back right after this message. How can people get a hold of you at the Epoch Times?
Well, just go to Epoch Times. Some people say Epoch, some people say Epic. It's just different. It's an American way, Epic, Canadian way, Epoch. So go to EPOCH, epochtimes.com, or go to one word, I read Epoch, I read Epic, you can say, .com, that you're going to see all our publications.
Thank you so very much. We'll be right back after these important messages on Kathryn Raaker's World and Let's Just Talk. We'll be right back. Okay. We are back with Nancy. He's an investigative reporter on China and the Chinese politics and government deception, and is highly knowledgeable in a variety of subjects, including coronavirus and things happening overseas. We were talking about what China's doing right now. I'm wondering if our government has got blinders on right now on what's happening overseas. It's scary.
Well, I think that we are our Congress, the China policy, the current China policy has got bipartisan support, and back in just like in the middle of January, the U.S. Congress, the new Congress, established a brand new committee that's called the United States Competition with the Chinese Communist Party. Very strict, specific. It's a competition. It didn't say competition to China, but it says competition with the Chinese Communist Party. And their explanation is they're trying to separate the Chinese people from Chinese Communist Party. The direct threat to the free world is Chinese Communist Party. So I think they're moving along. And the committee, after it was established, they set up 3 priorities. Number 1, the first priority is the security of Taiwan, and number 2 is TikTok. TikTok, it's got a wide U.S. population using it, and Chinese government is like picking the data that collected by TikTok left and right. So that's a serious concern. Mm-hmm. And number 3, they trying to ban the Chinese government agencies purchasing lands,
in the United States.
In the United States, yeah, it's been happening. They are purchasing, huge area of lands that's around the U.S. military base, like Air Force base. That kind of things been happening. So I think they still miss a very important aspect.
And that is?
And that is, the U.S. legislation need to establish almost like yesterday. We're already so behind, but they need to establish some new legislation to ban all the U.S. investment to China's high-tech industry. So that's very important.
Extremely important. I don't think they realize how dangerous and how they have. I mean, just look at what they did with going over to China and with all the drugs, with actually making antibiotics and all the different things that they did. They gave them the store, and the same thing with our technical data and everything else. I mean, when you think about it, it's unbelievable how naive some of these people are that are in government. I mean that. It's scary. I mean, I think when you live overseas, and you know firsthand, I do too, that it's not what you think it is. I mean, Xi can look really happy all the time, right? But you don't know what he's really doing. It's just like, all of these other leaders from Iran and whatever. And it's amazing when the people in China got so upset with being held in their apartments and everywhere else during the coronavirus. And the same thing was happening in Iran. The people were protesting and they were saying no more. They finally did something, but do they all go to jail or get killed for standing up for their rights?
Yeah, a lot of questions need to be asked by Americans. In the past 20 years, we have such a rosy picture that actually in the past half century, I mean, ever since Henry Kissinger visited Beijing, we have always had this rosy picture about future of China. We are hoping, if we make China richer, we make the regime become rich, become a superpower or something like that, then, eventually they are going to change themselves. Overnight, they will change their mind. They will all of a sudden join the democratic world, become a democracy country. But, well, that's just not true, right? From 2001 to 2021, that 20 years, China's economy after joining WTO in 2001, they grow tenfold. China's economy grew tenfold, but nothing changed. And China, the economy is in serious trouble, which make China, the Chinese Communist regime, much more dangerous because they are not changing their coercive behavior. They try to solve their own economic issues by expanding their economy to overseas. So that's no different than exporting their own economic hardship to the countries they are able to reach.
That's right. And they're very good at finding out information, and especially with buying all that property by military bases, right? I mean, and being in universities where there's, all the different technology and everything else. I mean, I can't believe it. Recently, you contributed a new Epoch documentary, The Final War. Tell us more about it and why it was a compelling subject with everything that's happening right now, Nancy.
Yeah, the movie was named The Final War. It's a documentary newly released by the Epoch Times. It's based on our investigation that the Chinese Communist regime had a 100 years plot. It's basically a 100-year plot. Ever since 1949, the Chinese Communist regime took over control of China. They had a 100-year plot to take down United States, the leader of the free world. So, basically that documentary shows all the evidence we collect and the investigation and why they're going after Taiwan and why they're going after, Japan, South China Sea, and, Australia. So it's talk about all the evidence we collected, and then we're talking about the unrestricted and unconventional warfare the Chinese military started back in the mid-90s against the Western world, especially against the United States. Hey, the U.S. public has not been aware that we have been in war with China ever since the mid-90s. That's called unrestricted and unconventional warfare that conducted and designed strategically by the U.S. military top military academy. And, basically that's a warfare without any moral ground, and you use every means they are able to use, like they include economic warfare, cultural warfare, you name it, and everything could become a technology warfare. Everything they can grab, will be used as a tool in this war against the United States.
Where can we learn more about you and see your work over the Epoch Times? Because
if you want to see my report, you can go to Nathan Su. Just type Nathan Su Epoch Times. You're going to see all the reports I did for the Epoch Times. I use Nathan Su as my professional name.
I want to tell you that it's always a major pleasure to have you and to understand really what's going on and to see how they're grabbing easily. And they've convinced people that they're really not bad people, that they really are wanting to change the world. They want to change the world to take the world. And they're pretty close to it right now. And I really feel for my friends in Taiwan and Japan at this point. And I think the Japanese are finally figuring that out. Would you say that is true?
Yes, Japan already increased their military budget, their defense budget this year by more than 26%. And they changed their China policy December of last year, because basically they label the Chinese Communist regime as the major threat of Japan's future security.
That's right. Well, and we want to thank you again. Happy New Year to you. A couple more days. And thanks so much for joining me and all that you do and the mission that you have with the Epoch Times. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathryn, for having me today, and happy Chinese New Year to you too, and to your audience too.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll see you soon. And this will be on everything that we have. Thank you so much.
Thank you.